The following video today is brought to you by Quip. Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out more about the world's greatest toothbrush. About a decade ago, there was a performer that took the world by storm seemingly out of nowhere. In a short period of time, this man became the biggest stand-up comedian on earth. And the kicker was, it was a ventriloquist act. I'm of course talking about Jeff Dunham. For a while now, I've wanted to look at how the dawn of YouTube helped a comedian who had been around for decades become a cultural phenomenon, the criticism he faced over the years, and what he's been up to now. But before all that, let me explain who this guy is and why his popularity is so impressive. Jeff began his career as a ventriloquist in the 70s as the art form was dying out. In the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of variety shows on television, and men having conversations with dummies on their lap was a popular way to fill in the schedule. But by the time he got involved with the craft, many people weren't trying to get into it anymore. Throughout the 80s and 90s, he found some success on talk shows and did smaller venues. But it wasn't until the internet that his colorful cast of characters started to get noticed more. I'll go over a few of them now. First we have Bubba J, who is a very stupid redneck. He lives in a trailer, loves NASCAR, and is an alcoholic. Next we have Jalapeno on a Stick, which I'm sure you probably guessed is Hispanic. To be more specific, he's Mexican who speaks English with an accent and is usually paired up with Jeff's other puppet, Peanut. What visually sticks out about Peanut over all the others is that he's made of soft fabrics and fur, while the other ones are made out of wood. On top of that, he's not based around any well-established stereotypes, rather he's just crazy and annoys everybody. Finally, you have the long-lasting Walter, who has been Jeff's right-hand man since the early days of his career. He's a grumpy old white guy that likes mocking people, which makes him a perfect companion to bring on talk shows where he can roast the other guests. Looking back at his early clips from the 80s and 90s, it's clear that Jeff Dunham has had a good act for quite some time before his fame. But the 2000s is when things really started to take off. As mentioned before, I was interested to see why at that point this dude with some weird puppets became a massive star. And I think I found the answer to that question. 9/11. Let me explain. The September 11th attacks ushered in a new era in many ways. Not only did people now have a massive fear of terrorists from the Middle East, but it was also the start of internet videos becoming a more integral part of people's lives, with Al-Qaeda messages being sent around the World Wide Web. During the Bush era is when Jeff came up with a very topical character that would forever change his career. Ahmed the Dead Terrorist.
Very nice. Yes, I got a favor to ask of you, infidel. What? When we're finished here, will you come caroling with me?
Ahmed at his core is an incompetent suicide bomber that is somehow lovable at the same time. He has a short temper and complains about his career as an Islamic extremist just as anyone else complains about their job. While that may sound kind of dark when you describe it, how Jeff played him made for a very effective character that let people laugh at one of the largest issues facing the world. The same time Ahmed was invented, a little site called YouTube was starting to become a big part of the internet, and people were looking for content to watch. As you probably already guessed, this skeleton terrorist was ready to entertain. In the free-for-all early days of YouTube, when people mainly came to the site for interesting one-off viral videos, clips of Jeff Dunham started to blow up, getting hundreds of millions of views, in a time before that was a common occurrence. At one point, the original Ahmed video was in the top 10 most viewed videos ever, with over 200 million views. And that's back in 2009. With this online success, Hollywood came knocking. Jeff ended up getting a TV show, more comedy specials, movie appearances, and sold out arenas across the world, filled with people that wanted to see a ventriloquist of all things. Of course, with this fame, there was some criticism as well. Many people started to make the case that his entire act was racist because many of Jeff's characters relied on stereotypes. I would defend him from this point though, considering he's pretty equal opportunity in regards to who he makes fun of. On top of this, I've seen a lot of people try to insult Jeff by saying he wouldn't be funny without the puppets, but I really don't see how that's fair criticism. The guy's been working on this specific act his entire life, so of course this is what he'll be good at. That's like criticizing a brain surgeon for not being a good dentist. That's not the field he went into. When looking at a ventriloquist, you should judge them on if they actually make you believe that their puppets are alive. When watching Jeff Dunham, I actually forget that that's just a dude talking to himself because he spent 40 years perfecting his act in what was thought to be a dead genre. A lot of the jokes in Jeff's specials aren't the most clever, but the presentation is what elevates his shows. And in his act, there are a lot of clever exchanges as well. I think you just need to ask yourself if there is any funnier ventriloquist that can be pointed to as the genre being done right. Can you even name another one? I can't. I do have to admit that I myself did grow out of Mr. Dunham's work, but I really can't remember the exact moment I stopped following him. Back at his height, I was the perfect age to really appreciate his comedy, but I guess I slowly lost interest as the years passed on, and I think that's the case with a lot of his former fans. Whether you like him or not, there's no denying that his superstardom has died down quite a bit in the past 10 years. So what has he been up to? Well, from what I can tell, he's still filling in massive crowds for shows, and Netflix paid for his last special, so audiences are still clearly there. For research purposes, I sat down and watched his new hour on Netflix, and I laughed quite a few times. When I decided to make this video, I was worried that without my nostalgia glasses on, I would realize Jeff's act was terrible, and I was just a stupid kid for liking him back then. I was afraid to revisit him because I've heard so many people bash him in recent times. But at the end of the day, I find myself wanting to defend the guy. In conclusion, it's crazy how the internet has a way of taking something from the past and bringing it back to the forefront of culture again. Jeff Dunham took a genre that hadn't been popular in 50 years and revived it with a fresh new take that captivated hundreds of millions in the early days of YouTube when that was hard to do. Even if you don't personally like him, that deserves respect. Hey everybody, before I finish this video today, I just want to give a very big thank you to my ongoing sponsor, Quip. Starting a healthy routine and sticking to it are two very different things. Inevitably, we skimp out on a full night of sleep, skip a workout or two, or brush our teeth with a tired old toothbrush. We're not perfect, but we can do better. And Quip is a better electric toothbrush that can help. This toothbrush has sensitive sonic vibrations which are gentle enough for your gums. People brush too hard and some electric toothbrushes are just too abrasive, but that is not the case with Quip. Another thing I like is the built-in 2-minute timer that pulses every 30 seconds to remind you when to switch sides and help you clean your whole mouth evenly. This is important because up to 90% of people don't brush for the full 2 minutes or don't evenly clean. This is why I personally love Quip and why over 1 million happy, healthy mouths do as well. Quip starts at just $25, and if you go to getquip.com/whathappened right now, you can get your first refill pack for completely free. Again, that's your first refill pack for free if you go to getquip.com/whathappened, and I'll also provide a link in the description down below.